Hello, and welcome to the Sisters of the Shire podcast. Today, I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Ashley. And like last episode, we are going to be talking about The Rings of Power Season 1. So, we were only going to do one episode of this, but we just talked about it so much that we filled up our time slot, our hour. So, we had to make it a two-parter. I'm promising you this will be the end of the recap, and we will get back to our regular scheduled program of the Unfinished Tales next week. So, join us if you want to just skip over these. I guess we'll see you next week. But if you want to stick around,
we'll try not to take it personally.
If you want to stick around and hang out with us as we talk about the first season of The Rings of Power, that is what we're doing today. So, like I will reiterate from last episode, we are fans of The Rings of Power. To an extent, we understand that there's some people that don't enjoy The Rings of Power because of the difference of lore and the story, and they feel like it's just going off the rails and things aren't how they're supposed to be and things like that. But we say to that, you know what? Cool. You enjoy that. You can have that opinion. That's totally fine. We are never going to say that you're wrong. We're never going to say, get out of here. But we want to say that we enjoy watching The Rings of Power just as much as you are enjoying not watching The Rings of Power, I guess. So we love talking about it just because we love the world of Tolkien and we love Middle Earth and all the things that go with it. And we think that the people who've made this show have worked really hard. I mean, the costumers, the writers, the horses, they're doing a good job, okay? Those horses are actors and actresses, and they're doing their best. There's a lot of people who worked really hard on the show. And so we are appreciating them and all their wonderful things they've done. And I think it's beautiful, and I'm enjoying the story. I can only say that Ashley kind of agrees, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can just say that I don't think that's quite right in the books. And this is just what I know from, our podcasts and the books that I've read. But also, I don't know what they're going to do in season 2. Maybe they're going to tie it all together.
Yeah.
And I know that there's certain things that they couldn't get the rights for. So they're kind of having to read between the lines go with what they got, read between the lines. And who's to say that's not how it happened?
Yes.
Like Abby said last week, the Unfinished Tales is kind of proof that there was a lot of different versions that Tolkien himself even had of the different stories. So who's to say this isn't one of those? So
yeah. And please, we are the Sisters of the Shire. We do a podcast about the history and the story and the lore of Tolkien's world. So we know when things aren't canon, okay? We're not ignoring it. Kind of. But just know that we know that. We have a podcast about this whole story. So when we say something going on doesn't really stick to the story, that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
We're fine with that. We know what the story is. We've read it before. But like Ashley said, and what we said last week, we're reading the Unfinished Tales right now, and there's a lot of different things that happened that we didn't hear a lot about in the Silmarillion. We got to know more about. So that's how I'm kind of taking it. Maybe,
right.
There was 2 or 3 sentences in the Silmarillion that tried to explain a whole generation, right? And it's okay, well, there's probably a lot of things that happened then. So maybe this is just the fun filler that we get. So that's how we're going to take it, okay? And if you guys want to just meet us next episode,
that's fine.
That's totally fine. We'll miss you.
And like I said, even just having the visual of it, I like, and also the vibes. I think the overall vibes of the characters or the places or the races even, like I feel like they got the dwarf race vibe really, really well. You can tell that they're not like it's not like they've never read the story. It's not like they don't know anything about Lord of the Rings and just decided to make a show. Like they understand the story. They are just, they're allowed to have their own creative ideas as well. That's all I'm trying to say. But
Yes.
I think the spirit is still in there.
Yes. So when we go forth in this episode, just enjoy it, just enjoy it for what it is, the beauty of it.
If you have a rebuttal you want to send us, go for it. I will.
You can send it to Ashley. I don't want to hear it. No, I'm just kidding.
Go for it.
Okay, so please come join us and just enjoy this wonderful world of Middle-earth as we discuss the first season of The Rings of Power Part 2. Let's go!
Let's go!
So, last episode we had some technical difficulties and I lost some of my audio, which was a huge bummer because it was talking about Elrond and Durin, and I just got to put it in there real quick because I'm so sad about it. But, Elrond is my favorite character this season. I love him, or this show.
Yeah.
Durin and Elrond are my favorite. And their brotherhood, their brotherly love is I love it so much. Like what got deleted last episode was just me talking about how I love the portrayal of sadness in their conversation between Elrond and Durin, how Elrond is confused on why Durin is so mad at him because he's like, hey, I thought we were friends. And then Durin's like, you went away and thought it was for like a few minutes, but you were gone for 20 years. And that's a long time for a dwarf, but I guess it's not a long time for an elf. And he was hurt because he didn't come to his wedding or didn't meet his kids. And
that
oh my
actor
gosh, going
from anger to tears, that actor, chef's kiss. He just did so good.
And then Elrond's crying and he's crying and I'm like, come on guys, this is too much. And we also got to see what I think is really beautiful was Elrond when they were doing the kind of like, before that we got to see Khazad-dûm, which is
in the daylight,
so cool. So cool. I mean, we only got to see the cobwebby, sad tomb of it
aftermath,
in Lord of the Rings. But I think we are blessed that we got to see the real, with our eyeballs, version of Khazad-dûm. That you see it as a thriving city, and it's so cool. Even Elrond was like, "This is awesome." In the show, Elrond was like, this is the most beautiful thing ever. It's so cool in here. What does he say? He says something in Elvish that's like an exclamation of like, this is beautiful.
I don't know. Yeah.
And we get to see like them gardening and like using like cool mirrors lights or whatever to make light in there. Yeah. And then there was like some cool animals down there that were like these megafauna that were helping them with their work. So cool.
I also love just seeing the architecture and the even just like the cups, the plates of a dwarf. Like everything is very angular. It is all about squares, and it's all about diamonds and angles. Yeah,
sharp edges and
Whereas elves are more about curves and filigrees and things like that. So, and even just like the doorways, were not arched; they were angular. And also
so cool.
That raven on the freaking elevator, because if you know, ravens are actually very important to dwarf culture. Monwood doesn't have all the birds. The dwarves have the ravens. That's their.
These are
They
my
chose. They stole
birds.
that one. Yeah.
This was mine. I call it's mine. Dibs, dibs.
And then also
giant ravens.
Oh, I hope they did. Like they have a giant eagle.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That'd be awesome. And then another thing that got cut out was talking about Elrond's feathery shirts that he wore underneath his cape, his cloak. And that's actually a hidden gem for the Silmarillion readers of his mom, because she got turned into a bird, of course.
Duh.
I mean,
of course.
Yeah.
Logical
Yours didn't? What? And his dad got turned into a star also. And there's some kind of references of that later too.
Okay, so we were watching, Ashley and I finally got to watch the first episode of the second season 2 nights ago. And I'm watching it with my husband, who like didn't rewatch the first season with me and has never
like a rookie.
So he's sitting next to me. And so he's like, do we ever get to meet Elrond's parents? I mean, where are they? And I'm like, his dad's actually a star and his mom's a bird. And he's like, what? And I'm like, be quiet, I can't hear the episode. It's like, I just like kind of left it at that. He's like, huh? What? And I'm like, yeah, okay, what?
That's another thing. There was a hidden gem in there also with Static. The Harfoots were talking about the falling star. And he's like, I've heard of men being turned into stars, but not stars turning into men.
Yeah, I know. That was pretty cute too.
Who he's talking about was Arendelle.
Yeah. And I love that they even know about that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they have that knowledge as well, which I think is really cool. Anyway, so I just had to put some Durin and Elrond in there because I'm so upset that they got left out last episode, because they are my favorite and I love them so much. Anyway, so this episode, we're going to be talking about the last 4 episodes of season 1, and the 5th episode, which is called Partings. We have the Nori and all her family are going on the Great Migration. Is that? I think that's what they call it.
My great thumb.
And they're trying to get to what is it? The orchards. I think that's what they said that they're trying to get to.
Something grove.
Yeah, the grove, and they are like attacked by these like scary wolf. They're not really wolves. They're like
another weird hybrid species.
They're not. They look more like orc made than like actually wolf, like nature made. Which I'm like, okay. And then that's when we see the stranger, the giant who fell from the stars, like save them using magic. And he like kind of does this like energy blast thingy. And then that's when we find out that he has like some big powers, right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I like that he has that, like you can tell that he's powerful, but like I wish it was a little bit more like, I don't know, I'm trying to explain it correctly in my brain. It's I wish it didn't look so much like an accident. Like I wish that he had like at the same
time, if you had your memory wiped and you had full like capacity of your powers and then your memory was wiped, you would also be kind of like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Like you forgot how to use your powers, but you're at your full powers. Like I kind of get the accident thing.
But I wish it was more like it helped him come out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you know, in those movies where like somebody loses their powers and then in like in a really dire situation, they're like, oh, I remember everything I need to do. I don't think he
Yeah.
was going to remember everything he would needed to do, but I feel like it should have helped him like, oh, like I starting to get some things back. That's just my
Yeah.
opinion because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's anyway. So we
One
get
scene
to
with one scene with Nori when she's saying, "You're good. I love," and then he goes, "No, I'm Peril. He's Firefly,"
yeah,
and then that was one of
yeah.
my favorite.
Oh,
And he has like kindling or something in his hand, and he's so like,
yeah.
I love that part so much.
Also,
I'm
Nori,
good.
hey babe, Nori, you don't have to eat snails in front of the camera anymore. I'm over it. Okay, it's disgusting.
I wonder what the actress actually used to eat.
I know. Ugh. Anyway, so we finally get some like power in the stranger, which is cool because it's like really powerful and it's awesome to see it. So then they he also does this other power because he hurt himself hurting the wolves, right? So he like hurts his arm and it like physically hurts him. Like he's like really, really bruised looking. Yeah. And I was like, gross. And then he has to like heal his body like through
ice.
He had
He's like I'm just gonna put some ice on it. That's actually
yeah. But in my brain, I'm like, are they trying to connect it to like when we saw Galadriel when it's really icy and like when she's in the tower, you know, trying to I know if you haven't watched this I haven't watched the first season. Sorry. It's like a red herring, you know. Red herring of the ice.
Yeah. And same with being so aggressive and these accidents being so aggressive, I guess, that he's doing it on purpose when he's not. You know? Yeah.
So it's very much like, are those two things the same? That's what I was thinking about.
But he hurts Nori for the first time.
Yeah. And he feels really bad about that, okay? He does. Yes. So, and then we jump to the Southlanders who are in the Ostiris Tower. And Arondir had came back and he's like, hey, this is what Adar wants us to do is basically surrender. And we didn't talk about it in the last episode, but I was actually looking at it on Amazon has this thing when you watch it that you can have little like tidbit facts like kind of pop up while you're watching the show. And so Arondir talks to Adar and he's very confused on who he is because he doesn't look like a orc. He looks like a really messed up elf that got like tortured, which that's a real thing. That's what happened for the first orcs were tortured, captured, kidnapped, tortured elves, right? And I don't think that they were ever like turned into the nasty looking orcs that we see in the movies and things. I think what we see in Adar is what they look like in the very beginning. Like that's
the first draft.
The first draft.
1.0.
Yes. The blueprints basically to make and then they just got worse and worse over time. It's not like it's the backwards of like a product. It's like we're gonna take a really good version first and make it worse over time. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, so it depends on your perspective, or better if you're like a bad guy, like no, not ugly enough. More ugly. More scary. More goth.
Make them gross. So I was reading on the Amazon, like kind of tidbit things, which people take it what you will. like, I don't know who's writing these tidbits, but I thought this part was interesting because Arondir isn't in the books. Like, he's just an extra character, kind of like, what's her name?
Tariel.
Huh?
Tariel.
Yeah. It said, so when Adar and him were talking, he was like, where were you born? Adar was asking this to Arondir. And he's like, I was born in Beleriand by the river and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh. And on the Amazon thing, it says he was born in a place that is now sunken in the sea.
Oh, sure.
And I was like, okay. So that's why he's like, that makes like, thank you for that little bit of information. That makes me a little bit like, oh, okay. Like, it places him a little bit more
homeless.
Yeah, it places him a little bit more in the story for me because I'm like, oh, I know where he's from. Like, he's not just from this other town that it doesn't even exist either. Like, they gave him a real place that like he came from.
Right. And
so I thought that was interesting when he was talking about that. And then the thing that I read. So he was Adar told him like, go tell the people like they can join us or die. These are my children, which I guess he's like one of the first orcs. And he's like, these are my babies. I helped make them, which I'm like, gross. All right. But so they get to the Southland, or Arondir gets the Southlanders, and he's like, guys, we don't have to surrender to him, okay?
I've watched you guys make better choices over the years than your ancestors did. Don't be like your ancestors, please.
I know
you're better than this.
And so, of course, that nasty Waldrig dude without a shirt. Find a shirt, guy. Find a shirt. It's not that hot outside. Shows
Theo,
or convinces like half of the population of the village. Like, no, we prospered when we went with Morgoth. Let's go do it again. And he was successful and took half of the people away, and which was kind of sad.
Yeah.
And so they left, and then Theo shows Arondir the hilt, and but that was after Waldrig tells Theo that, hey, I know you have that sword hilt,
right?
And it's actually a gift from Sauron to the men to be like powerful. And so Theo's like kind of freaked out by that. He's like, I don't want this anymore. Like, this is kind of freaky. And it's there, you kind of think like, oh, is Theo gonna choose the dark side? But
he lives with Mama, so
he stays with his mom. And
brings the question. They bring it up. They keep hinting at it. I'm waiting for that that plot hole to finalize. Is who and where is the dad? They keep hinting at things, but
so
we'll find out.
Then we go back to Elrond, my sweetheart.
Elrond.
My Elrond. And he finally like gets into talking with Durin, and he's like, okay, can you help us build this forge? You guys have the dwarf power to do it. And we had been talking, I think it got cut out, that they needed the forge done in a certain amount of time, but Celebrimbor wouldn't tell them why. Like, wouldn't tell Elrond why. I just needed my spring. He's like, okay. And so he's like, that's how they started becoming like him talking to Durin again. So they're learning, or they're building the forge right now. And Elrond learns about Mithril, which I love the backstory of that. I think it's so cool that we got to see how Mithril came about. And is that story that he talks about, the Gil-galad talks about how Mithril was made? That's
not
in
canon?
Any lore? Okay,
no, it's not canon.
Still super cool.
I like it. I don't hate it.
I think it was a cool way.
And I like that
there's a difference between there's no lore about it. Let's give it a lore. Let's give it a history because there's no written history about it, to changing written history about it. Like if there was already a story about Mithril and then they're like, nah, we don't like that one. We're going to make this one. There's a difference between that and saying there is no history about why Mithril is so cool and so helpful. Let's give it a cool history so it makes sense. There's a difference. I enjoy that.
Yeah. I did go into a bit of a rabbit hole about that when we first were watching the show, because I was like, so if the dwarves had just discovered the Mithril, how did Gil-galad know about it? Apparently that wasn't the only place that there was Mithril. It was very vague, like that it was the elves had found it in these other places, but it was just tiny amounts, just very small. So where did those come from? To know, but that was one question I had. I'm like, but then how? Wait a minute, like
the yarn and the thumbtacks.
Yes, yeah. And the Mithril itself, how they mine it, I was also curious. Like, how did they get that thing? And I don't know.
Maybe we'll learn more about it next season. Yeah. But the thing with the Mithril is that King Durin the Third, Durin's dad, doesn't want to share it.
Right.
And he also thinks it's super dangerous to mine it, and he doesn't want dwarves dying mining it, to give it to the elves. Because we learn that Gil-galad knew about the Mithril, and that's why he wanted to go ask the dwarves to do that. Elrond was in the dark about it, which I feel bad because they put him in the middle, and I was kind of like, come on, man. But it will help restore the light of what did he call it? The light of, it's not the light of the Valar, but the light of
the Eldar.
Which back into them, because they're fading, they're dying.
And somehow a tree having the black, stuff on it means that didn't make a ton of sense to me. I wish that had been more clear in the show. Maybe, and I think they're going to get. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm assuming they're going to get more specific on how that would actually work. Wow, how X plus Y equals.
I kind of feel like it's the same as when that spider like drained the light of the other tree, and it kind of like sucked everybody's light battery out of themselves. But maybe it's like that.
Maybe. But I had this weird thought the other day. So, Mithril. What other circumstances do we know of Mithril in the other books?
Just the chainmail shirt that Frodo was gifted.
So,
which comes from Bilbo because Thorin gave it to Bilbo.
Right. So here's my thing. I think it was a pretty secret gift, but if it wasn't, I mean, Bilbo had that shirt in Rivendell. That's where he gave it to Frodo, at least in the movie. I don't remember specifically in the books, but I think it was pretty similar.
Yeah.
So Elrond might or might not have known that Bilbo had that. But
that's a lot of Mithril.
Right. But here's my thing. So you remember in like the later parts of Return of the King, when Arwen is dying, the light of the Eldar is leaving her.
She did air quotes, everyone, around dying.
I did, yeah. And that it's funny the way that they showed that, like her jewel was not as shiny. It would look darker and like dirtier, which I'm like, okay. But it's interesting that Elrond, who was such a major part of this origin story of the Mithril and knows that it can bring back the light of the Valar, wasn't like, get her the shirt. Let's get her the shirt. Like, wrap her up in the shirt. She'll be fine.
I need 10 cc's of Mithril right now.
Yes. Like, I mean, honestly, this is made after it, but I don't know. I wish they could connect that somehow, but
maybe it's so lost to time that he like didn't like he not forgot about it, but like I didn't think there was any left or there was any out there or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so it's a kind of a rift between the dwarves and the elves right now over Mithril because King Durin is stubborn and doesn't want to help the elves. For again, the what is it called? The theme of elves being the bad guys here is like a lot in this.
Yeah.
And then speaking of elves, Galadriel is still on Numenor, and she wants Miriel and some Numenorians to go help the people of the Southlands. And Miriel decides, okay, for some reason her mind has changed, and she's like, okay, let's do this. Let's go help them. But her dad... her
mind was changed because the Valar were crying.
Yeah, is it Palantir, his name? Or yeah.
Tara Palantir.
Says,
remember, because all
such a crazy foreshadowing that he's like, don't go. I only see darkness in your future. I'm like, oh.
I brought that up to Nate. I'm like, and then she lost her vision.
I know.
You could only see darkness. Do you get it?
And then also in this episode, which I was like, sure. I was like, whatever. Is Galadriel kind of like opening up and being kind of, what's the word? Vulnerable to Hallbrand and like them kind of like becoming closer. I'm like, ew, gross. I don't like that for some reason. It's not like I know she's supposed to be with someone else, but also it's like, it just feels weird, which I guess is not like, maybe we're supposed to feel like that. Maybe it's like, that doesn't feel right. Maybe that's how the vibe we're supposed to get. Because I was like, I don't like that actually.
So I heard something that Halbrand wasn't, like the actor wasn't told that he was Sauron until like later in the series.
Spoilers! I'm not there yet.
Right. But I noticed that both him and this other character that we're going to talk about later, when they're being... I feel like there was a time where they knew, like, okay, this is the part where you're evil, okay? And they're like, okay, got it. I will not blink for this entire scene. I will just have my eyes open bigger. This is what evil people do when they talk.
Only weak people blink.
But like you kind of, if you go back and watch whenever he's being like manipulative or like starting to get like a little evil, his eyes get bigger and they don't blink.
Who needs blinking when you're a Maiar, right?
I guess.
Anyway, and so Numenor, the ships of Numenor, gorgeous, beautiful scene.
Beautiful.
They pack up and they get going, and Isildur, like, he doesn't stow away, but he like tries to stow away.
He
and then
saves the day
because he did something heroic for once, and so he's on the ship,
and
he's
somehow
like, so
that was
excited
enough
because it's like, I get to go to Middle Earth.
But then they also like,
and you're like, oh,
he humbles him by making him the stable sweep. Which I didn't love that weird storyline. That was a little weird to me. It felt a little forced, especially with the sister being involved with Pharazon's son. That I just see that as a I don't know. It feels a little forced, and it doesn't feel natural to me. But that's just me. But my foreshadowing is that the sister, because she is the link with Pharazon, is going to be... basically, the only reason they're in a relationship is that because they had to figure out a way of getting Pharazon to see the Palantir. And that's how they did it. Like,
All right. Okay.
Because she sees the Palantir when she's drawing the king, and then she's going to tell her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend's going to tell Pharazon, and that's how he's going to get his foothold. That's what's going to happen. I'm calling it. I've watched one episode of season 2.
So they're heading out to help the Southlanders. And speaking of Southlanders, we're on to episode 6 of this. We go back to the Southlanders and Arondir, and they kind of like, I love to reference that it's like the Three Amigos, where they set up the town for like ambushing the bad guys.
Yes.
So they make a trap and they like have people on like fighting back. Like they're not gonna let them be overtaken. They're gonna fight back, and they are successful, right? They what is it called? What is the word called?
Vanquish. They win.
No, like they
entrap.
Stop it from happening. They like hold them back. Like they're like, this is not. They're not going to be in my town. And then they like kill a bunch of these orcs, and then they find out that like the people that they thought were orcs were actually the half of their townsfolk that went with Waldrig, and that was like the twist of that was like, oh, and you can see like people freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, we just killed like our neighbors or like our friends and stuff. And I think the psychological part of that is what like brought them down. Like it weakened them for a second because they're like, what the crap did we just do? And then like then they had
because it almost makes you as bad as the orcs because you're just killing them too.
And they kind of stopped and they lost their like momentum, I guess. And so they got ambushed by more orcs that were like
waiting in the trees
or whatever. And,
oh wait, sorry. Pause. We have to talk about that fight scene between Arondir and that huge orc. Okay.
Yes.
I understand.
And it's bleeding in his mouth.
Okay. Yes. And he doesn't close his mouth ever. But and there's certain things that they're trying to make.
And he can't breathe through my nose.
They're trying to make things very obvious to the people that don't know things, like how they kept talking about the sunlight, and they have to make Mordor sunless so that the orcs can live there. Okay, we get it. And then they were talking about they kept showing the orc blood, and it's even all over his face. You see that it's orc blood is clearly black, and so that when he sees the guy laying on the ground that looks like an orc, but he has red blood, he's like, "Oh crap, that ain't an orc." And they're like, but they didn't have to hit that so hard. I didn't want the blood squirting out of the eyeball. I didn't want the blood squirting into his mouth. I could have done without that.
Yeah.
That's all I had to say.
And
I couldn't with that.
And then
Bronwyn gets shot.
Bronwyn gets shot by an arrow, and I'm like, okay, props to whoever made that scene. That looked so real when they were trying to like fix her up. That girl was bleeding. She was like a freaking broken faucet hose of blood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because like it was very real. I will give it to the prop makers, the special effects people, like stuff like that. That felt very real, and how she was freaking out and how they had to like zoom in on it. I mean, I'm like, come on. Like, ooh. But that part when it was kind of like in slow motion where people were trying to run to the like holding house.
Yeah.
And they were being shot and like all that stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is it felt very defeating but also like scary at the same time. Well, props to the show because I was very emotionally attached to that scene because I was like, oh no. And then beautiful scene of Numenorians coming in with their white and gold armor, and they come in and they start saving these townspeople. And they you see like Galadriel and Isildur and his friends like fighting and everything, and it was pretty cool. And they like are like, we did it, we defeated them. And Arondir I was gonna say Arondir goes to tell Galadriel, because Arondir, I know we mentioned before, had the like hilt, that the Sauron hilt, because Theo had given to him, like, hey, this is a bad thing I have, I'm confessing to you that I've had this. And they kind of had the bonding moment, which I'm like, okay, I guess. I mean, I
guess I don't mind you being my stepdad.
Yeah, sure. And what does it say? Arondir tells Galadriel, like, hey, Adar had stolen the
he has something again. He can't be let away. He can't get away with it.
And so they're like, her and Halbrand chased after him on horseback, and they capture him. And I think it's really interesting because it leads into season 2. Just from the first episode we watched of season 2. I can't get to it now because we're not doing season 2. When Halbrand looks at Adar and he goes, do you remember me, or something like that? He's like, I don't know who you are, basically. And then he looks so upset, like so mad and sad. But, and I'm like, wait. And it leads into the red herring of like, oh, did like he kill his family? And like, and that's even what he says. Adar's like, did I kill someone you love? Did I kill like a child or your wife or something like that? Yeah. And so you're like, oh, maybe
look
that's
on his face. Oh man. It had me going.
And so that,
but I'm sorry, that horse, horse, he trips the horse, and I always hate that scene so much. I'm like, the horse did nothing wrong.
Good acting.
I hope he's okay.
Good acting, horse. Horses need their own Oscar category, okay? They need their own Emmy or Oscar category. It's instead of like a real medal, they get a real medal Oscar, and then they get one that's carved out of a carrot. And they get to eat it.
I love it.
That's their prize.
I love it.
And then you find out that Adar doesn't have the hilt. It was like what was it? A hammer. And you're like, oh no, where's the hilt? And then you see nasty old Waldrig has it, and he like uses it in this big giant stone statue thing, which you had seen when the Southlanders came into the Tower Keep, and it looks like Sauron's face, like his like crown,
his mask. Yeah.
And you're like, uh-oh. And then Waldrig uses it like a key, and he opens this dam.
Okay, hold on.
I'm like, how come he didn't die? But he opens this dam.
Hold on. So, okay, pause, because they don't know. So Adar gets captured. They think they have the hilt. They don't know that it's, not the hilt for a while. They like interrogate him. The Numenorians are cleaning up things. Like, it's a while. And I could just see Adar being like, that's the slowest freaking guy ever. When is he going to get there?
Why did I choose that guy?
Waldrig, I imagine, is like speed walking up the hill to the Osterith.
He has to sit on a rock for a while, like, yeah. So, you watch this really cool scene of like the water breaking through and like going into this mountain, and it turns into a volcano.
And I want to know the actual science. Is that a thing? Can you just pour a crap ton of water and it will make the mountain explode?
Actually vinegar, and there's baking soda.
I like it.
So this episode was called Udun.
Udun.
What is Udun?
So the tie-in is do you remember when Gandalf is facing the Balrog and he goes, the dark fire shall not avail you, flame of Udun. Udun is just another name for the, it's like, Angband, I think.
Oh.
So
like bad
basically
fire.
Yeah.
Evil fire.
Oh no, sorry. That was my bad. Udun is actually the other name for Mordor.
Oh, so it is evil fire
Right.
of
Yeah.
Mordor.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what
Yeah.
he's saying.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting it's interesting that they call this episode Udun because this eruption happens, right? And then it goes into
Oh,
the
like
seventh
hell.
episode. It goes into the seventh episode, and Galadriel wakes up, and I think it's such a cool scene that they do because I live in a place. Ashley, I'm not sure gets it as bad as we do sometimes, but we have a lot of forest fires where I live, and when there's fire, when there's huge fires, the surrealness of the atmosphere is crazy. Like it is like black and red and like this like blanket of this creepy feeling of this fire that's like overtaken, um, you know, big area of land. So when they show Galadriel waking up and she's like covered in ash and everything is like orangey red and it's like the atmosphere is totally changed and it's like quiet and stuff like that. I haven't necessarily been in a place where there's a ton of ash, but I have been in a situation where it looks like that. Like it's very orangey red and crazy feeling because you're kind of internal like safety thing in your brain is like, this is a bad situation. This is not a good place to be. Like your animal instinct of like, how like deer and everything like run away out of the forest when there's huge forest fires. That's like in our human brains too, because it's like something's wrong. This is weird. This is very strange. How they depicted that. My husband and I, who he's kind of new to the forest fire thing, he was like, I know what that feels like. It feels so weird. It feels very doom, like end of the world apocalyptic kind of thing. And
I imagine it kind of has that surreal quietness to it, like when it snows, how it's quiet. It's like that too.
And
can we go back to the conversation between Galadriel and Adar, because there's a lot of Silmarillion nuggets in there too about.
Okay, we can jump back to that.
Sorry.
Cover it
because that was something that's actually not very well known. I mean, Saruman mentions it for like a second in the Lord of the Rings. Like, do you know how the first orcs were made? They were elves once, tortured and twisted, now perfected. Whatever. But the term that he uses for, or that she uses too, of these dark brothers or whatever, Moriondor or whatever. I mean, the roots of the word make sense, but I hadn't heard that before, but it makes sense. But also her talking about Saruman and, I killed Saruman and which, I mean, it left you with so many questions. Like, wait, what? Is he talking about himself? Like, I killed the part of me that was Saruman and now I'm different. Did I actually kill Sauron? Not Saruman. So it was a very interesting conversation. And the fact that she said that, you can't be, or what was it? Something about he can't create good things. Oh, they're my children. They're like, no, those are all abominations because you guys can't create good things. You're not allowed to. Iluvatar said so. You guys are all just made in mockery, which was very accurate for what Morgoth first made the orcs. He couldn't. The Uruk, yeah, because he couldn't actually make cool things anymore. But he's like, I want to make my own elves. I'll make these ones. And did I do it right?
It's like the Lilo and Stitch where they're like, I want to play dolls with you. And their dolls are all pretty and then hers is like nasty looking. And then she like hugs it like, I still love you.
I love that so much.
Right,
I
right.
that immediately. I love that. Okay, so sorry. Go back to where you were. I just have to make sure we talked about that.
Yes, that was a very Silmarillion filled
Silmarillion.
conversation when Galadriel is talking to Adar and kind of like elf to elf, basically. Like,
yeah.
Hey, like, what's going on? So when Galadriel wakes up after this happened, it's like crazy. Like the horse running by that's on fire. I mean, what?
Burning horses.
I know. We see that Queen Muriel is like doing her duty. She's like trying to help people, which I'm like, yes. Like she's not like, get me out of here. She's like, I will help everyone. Yeah. And she unfortunately loses her eyesight in the most awful way, which I'm like, why are your eyes also not like burnt looking? But she got like hot ash in her eyes. I don't know what happened.
Sparks and
yeah. And she lost her eyesight. And Isildur is also presumed dead because it looked like a house fell on him. And Galadriel finds Theo, and they kind of travel together. And they kind of have this like heart to heart of like, I think I'm a bad person. I've also done bad things. And we hear a little bit about Celeborn, her husband, which I'm like, huh? Because she said that he's dead or not dead. He's gone. She doesn't know where he is.
Right.
Or what happened to him. Which I'm like, maybe he's not dead. Who knows?
And just for the lore itself, as far as I remember, they were supposed to meet in Lothlorien for the first time. And then or Lorien, the forest, and then they make it theirs later.
So maybe they will later on. Who knows? She's still a young elf. Who knows? And everything kind of looks terrible for the Southlanders and the Númenóreans, and it looks like the orcs have conquered that area. It's pretty sad. Pretty big bummer. Mm-hmm. But going back to the Harfoots, because we haven't talked about them in a while.
The witches.
I know. Okay, so there are like these three women or things, they appear as women, that are like following the stranger and Nori and everything, and they're like just being real big bullies because they like light all of the Harfoot's caravans on fire, which I'm like, that's so sad. Why would you do that? That's so mean. And
I got to talk to her in the Zoom thing with Albert and his friend Anna Maria, and she's so nice. Like, it's so jarring. Like,
it's scary.
But you were so nice.
I know. So that's pretty cool. I'm sad to have missed it. I don't know what I was doing. I was probably busy with children or something.
You were sleeping because I stayed up till like 1 or 2 in the morning to talk to her.
Yeah. I probably had a tiny baby at the time, and I was like, sorry, can't do that. But
if you ever want to find it.
What? It's on YouTube if you ever want to watch Ashley talk to the creepy witch lady, who's actually very nice in real life.
Yeah.
They, what is it called? Are trying to get to the stranger, which is the giant man that is with Nori. And Nori and Sadok and her mom, and is Poppy there?
Yep, and Poppy
there. Go to try to help him because for some reason, they assume that those creepy witch ladies are trying to get to the stranger. And she's like, we need to save him. And they get to them, and from they kind of pop up randomly. They're not like a ton in other episodes, but like, that they're powerful, like they have powers. And I have never really heard about witches or things like that in the, what is it called? The Lord of the Rings or
Right.
Silmarillion or whatever. There isn't a lot of talk about witches, but like these witches I feel are kind of like how Bellatrix is to Voldemort. Like they're just really like devout followers of Morgoth and Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
And then they like kind of were gifted, like maybe they were gifted some powers or something. That's how I'm choosing to see it, is that they were like really, really devout followers. And then they
well,
like
it does talk about in the Silmarillion how before the men crossed over the mountains, how they were in the east. And Sauron and Morgoth were actually the first people to find them. The elves weren't very on top of that action. So there was
remember they're like, oh, what was I supposed to do today?
Yeah, exactly.
I cannot remember what I was supposed to do today.
So when the men wake up, their first greeting is by Sauron and his servants. And it's very vague, but there is talk of Sauron having like a sorcery school, is how I imagine it, in the East. And that's kind of where it's guessed that the blue wizards go when they come, that they go to the East and try and fight these Sauron sorcery schools. So students. So that's kind of what I pictured it in my brain. That's how I understand it. But yeah, it's interesting that what their chosen things are. Like there's the soldier, and even their names, the nomad and I forgot the other one, but the dweller.
Yeah, so. One of them, like they look very like magic or something has like changed them a little bit. They don't look human anymore. They look human, but it's kind of creepy. Like they're just a little creepy. So they finally get to the stranger and they're like bowing to him, which is confusing because you're like, huh? And then they call him Sauron. They said, this is who you are. He doesn't remember. Like, we have been following you because we saw you come from the sky. I don't think they say anything about like a prophecy saying that this is what would happen, but they were like, we know who you are. You don't know who you are, but we know who you are. Like, try to make him remember. Like, they're trying to use magic on him and stuff.
Which is interesting because if you think about this, like, if you think about the aftermath of the War of Wrath, it's a hard thing to say, but so we don't think that Sauron fought in the War of Wrath. As far as we know, he was kind of in hiding because he, in case Morgoth, lost it, he didn't want his best lieutenant gone too. That's how I see it.
Very Air Force One, like they can't travel together.
Yes. So if he's in hiding, why would he come down as a star? That part doesn't make sense to me. So why they think this is Sauron?
It's now his time, I guess, because Morgoth is gone. He's like, okay, it's my time now. Maybe.
Well, yeah, but yeah. I'm just saying.
So anyway, so they keep trying
to... It's not Sauron.
Yeah. You're Sauron. Please, like, come into your powers. Like, remember who you are, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they, like, bow to him and everything. And then you think, like, oh, my gosh, is this really him? And then they play it so well that, like, you really don't know. Like, you're just like, is it? I don't know. And then... which is very similar to the like when Gandalf came back as Gandalf the White, and you're like, is it Saruman?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he, what is it? Says something. He becomes more lucid. I feel like he becomes more himself, and he can talk more. And he's like,
well, the dweller. They say make him see. and she does some magic on him to get him his memory back or something. So that's why he's.
And he was like, no, I'm a good person. And he like blasts them away. Yeah. He like blasts them away. And you see
they turn
what they
into
look
moths.
Like. I know, but you see their like ghosty faces, like how they look. And one of them looks like the mouth of Sauron, which I'm like, that's crazy. And then the other one looks like they kind of look like when the men the Nazgul. Yeah, that's what I was like, that's pretty cool.
I love the moth connection because, and I want to know what his thing is with moths. Radagast, I guess, took all the other creatures.
He's like, you get these. But, you don't even get butterflies. You get these ones. So Sadok dies.
I'm about to be going off trail.
Oh my gosh. So much. Oh my gosh. Can that be on our headstones? I'm about to be going off trail. And he saves the stranger, saves the day. And he, that's the end, like the sunrise and everything. And it's beautiful. And then we go back to Galadriel, and they reunite with like Bronwyn and Arondir, and Halbrand is like super injured, and Galadriel's like,
when did that happen?
I know, like we need to. What if he did it to himself?
Yeah.
She's like, he needs elvish medicine. We need to go to Eregion, which is like, I guess, the closest place for them, maybe. And then Muriel's like, okay, I'm going to go back to Numenor and I'm going to get more troops because I'm mad. Like, I'm pissed. And this is not going to stand that all these things are happening, right?
Right. The Elendil, complete 180. It really jarred.
Oh, he's like mad.
Yeah, he's like hating Galadriel now. He blames her for everything. And Nate was watching it. And he's like, I don't understand why he's so mad. like sure, you lost a son. Like I get
picked her up.
Yeah. And then he just looks at her with just such hatred, though. Like,
it's not her fault that the orcs did this.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. When Muriel's like, not to take away from the serious scene, but when Muriel's like, Elendil, and it's like, and he's like crying in the back, I'm like,
oh yeah,
pull together, Elendil. I don't know why that part made me, his like crying face, I'm like, okay, that made me laugh. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm heartless. It was funny to me. Anyway.
And he's fighting with the horse. Come on, Beric, if I have to keep it together, so do you.
Yeah, I know. And then Elrond is banished from Khazad-dûm.
Right.
And it's sad. And they have that talk of like, we're brothers. Like, you're my best friend. I'm like, oh gosh. Oh my gosh. And so like at the very end, he's banished, but then you see he's holding a piece of mithril in his hand because Durin gave him that piece of mithril, which I'm like, oh my gosh. They're BFFs.
I actually had a few thoughts on Durin because I was trying to explain to Nate like that. So his nickname, King Durin, not Prince Durin, the dad. King Durin is literally nicknamed Durin the Deathless. And while dwarves don't have the immortality of elves, they do live longer than men do. And so, but this Durin actually lived longer than like most. And so you could see how if you had your heir, usually they die, the king dies, and then, the prince comes the king. And, but the Prince Durin was waiting and waiting and waiting to, take over for his dad, but he just never died. So he's like in it, like, you imagine like this middle-aged man being like, I just want to be king and do what I want to do, and you won't die, and I don't like it. Like,
why won't you die?
There's definitely that aspect to it as well.
And oh my gosh, when King Durin was talking about baby Durin, like him being a baby and him being
was
like,
very sad.
Oh my gosh. Come on, guys, you're killing it with the feelings here.
Mm-hmm.
But then we
and
see
the thing with the table. Sorry, the thing with the table. And he's watching so he tricks the elves into thinking that this is like a really important piece of stone. Sorry, we're rewinding a little bit, but I just love Doran, and his humor just gets me. And he's watching them watching the elves carry this table away, and it's really heavy, and one of them like trips or something like that, and he starts laughing. And Elrond's like,
then Elrond like,
you made it up, like, didn't you?
And I love he's like, okay, you can do this, but tell Disa that the table's from me. You cannot claim it from like.
When Elrond tells him why he needs the mithril, and he's like, so the fate of all elven race is in my hands. Say that again. And he's like, whose hands?
I just want to hear.
And he has that and that little glint in his eye. I freaking love Doran.
I know. He's so great. I love him so much. But so the reason why Elrond is banished is because him and Durin were caught mining for mithril, which was a no-no from the king. And Prince Durin is stripped of his royal status, and King Durin seals the mine. But you see down below what is in the mithril mine.
Mm-hmm.
What does Gandalf call it? Like something like there's fire in the, like, something deep in the mountain. Oh no, Saruman's talking about the Balrog. He's like, there's something deep in the mountain and hasn't been awoken for a long time or something like that.
Yeah.
And you see it's a Balrog that's living below the mine.
That wakes up from just the falling of a leaf.
Yeah, but it's a special leaf. It's golden. And then I think what's really cool at the end of that episode is when Adar is talking to the orcs, and he's like, we no longer have to be afraid of the sunlight. This is our land now. And then you see the title says the Southlands or something, and then it burns away and it just says Mordor on it. You're like, oh.
That happens now. Yeah.
So at the end of the season, we see Galadriel take Halbrand to Eregion, and she sees Celebrimbor and what's his name? Elrond. Sorry, I forgot about it. I'm sorry, Elrond.
How could you forget?
And they are trying to make something from this mithril. They're like, we need to make something to help the elves with this mithril, but nothing is working. And Halbrand is magically healed in like a day, which is like, put two and two together here, people. Like, he healed really fast.
Yeah.
And he kind of like slithers his way into Celebrimbor's like workshop, and he's like, hey, like, maybe instead of this you can do this. And Celebrimbor's like, oh, okay, all right.
But
and
it's so funny how you only know this because of the Silmarillion, that Fëanor, being his grandpa, left big shoes for Celebrimbor to fill. And if you're always being compared to that, you could see how he has this like insecurity about him, about like, nothing I make is going to be as good as what my grandpa did. But then Halbrand comes along and is like flattering him a little bit and just like feeding into this, just like, I heard your works are so good. And, and you can see it on his face that he's just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
But another interesting tidbit is that Halbrand says, the craftsman who trained me spoke, greatly of your works. And I'm like, which craftsman is he talking? Is he talking about Aule? Because technically Sauron was trained under Aule in the beginning as a smith. So maybe, possibly, throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, like, he kind of sweet talks his way into it, right? And he's like, put off some more information that, like, Celebrimbor's like, oh, you know what you're talking about, and blah, blah, blah. And then we see Galadriel get the information that Halbrand is not who he says he is. And she goes and confronts him, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm Sauron. Like
100%
she's
Sauron.
like, oh,
and that's when the non-blinking starts.
Yeah, she's like, oh no. And she like,
same with the scene with her brother that he tries to run away, and she somehow gets these visions. I don't know. I didn't know Sauron could do that. But she's like back in Valinor with her brother. And before, the scene between her brother and her was like super sweet, super cute. But this scene, that actor did such a good job in being so freaky and creepy. I'm like trying to figure out what the difference is. He just doesn't blink and his eyes are like bigger than normal. I did not like it.
So he runs away. Halbrand/Sauron runs away, and Galadriel goes back to Celebrimbor and Elrond, and she's like, "Oh yeah, he's gone. We don't need to talk about it." Or like,
back to making these rings, and you know what? We should make 3 of them. Just an idea.
I love the reasoning behind having 3. I thought that was pretty cool.
1 rule, and 2 divide, 3. There's balance.
Yeah. And so
I also love the idea when they're trying to decide what to make with the mithril. Like the first things Elrond suggests is a scepter, because he thinks of, politicians and kings and things like that. And then Galadriel is like a sword, because she's all vengeance and violence. And then Celebrimbor, who has this insecurity about him, is like, what about a crown?
Will you like me if I make a crown?
Yeah.
Anyway, and so they make the 3 elven rings.
And somehow that dagger, that was her brother's, that had the Valinorian steel or silver and gold that they melted together. Somehow they could separate later and make silver and gold rings. I'm just throwing that out there. How'd you do that?
They're magic, okay. And then we see the end of that, and it's kind of this like ba 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 ba, like the rings have been forged.
Yes.
And then we see
Halbrand,
Sauron, like traveling back to the Southlands.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks creepy and different now. And then at the very end, Nori and the stranger, which he was told that his name was like something, and Nori's like, what was that word they used? It's like, well, in your tongue or language, it would be called like a wizard.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah.
And then he has the quote about following your nose and just tying that in more.
And that they needed to go to the land of Rune. Mm-hmm. And so Nori is like, okay, I'm going to come with you. But now that I'm watching it, like as a mom of children, how they could just let their kid just go. Like, okay, it's not like you're like sending them off to college. It's like, this is a very dangerous thing you're doing, and you probably won't live. And just to be like, okay, I'm going to give you a hug. I probably will never see you again. Like, how could you do that? How could you do that? I don't understand, like, in your heart and your mind, like, to be able to let go of your child like that is like...
The scene with the dad, it was more touching with the dad than the mom. I don't know how or why that was. I mean, there was like a little thing in there about like maybe I misunderstood it. Is that mom actually her biological mother?
No, that's her stepmom.
That's what I thought. Okay, so that's why it was more touching between the dad and her then.
Because remember he said his wife died, and then
right.
Yeah. But yeah, so they are going to the land of Rune. So we have Sauron going back to the Southlands.
Now Mordor.
Nori and the wizard going to Rune, and Galadriel and Aragon
in Eregion. In Eregion.
Are like together in Eregion. And that's how that season ends.
Yeah.
And it's very like, ooh, what's going to happen next? But it's, like I said before, I love the show. I think it's beautiful. We've talked about things that we know aren't canon, and we are like, okay, that could have happened. We don't know. Like, and then there's all those other things where we're like, that didn't really happen that way, but okay, like, sure.
Yeah.
But I just want to say to the people who worked on the show, bravo. Beautiful work. You guys did so great. Actors, actresses, you guys did amazing. So good.
So
high praises. And I am so excited for season 2. We did, like we said before, we did watch the first episode. Oh my gosh.
I have so many things to talk about that.
I know.
I do. I wanted just to end with some of the other things that Lizzie said, because I need to share them. I thought they were so funny. So she was asking, Mom, is there a book about the Rings of Power? I'm like, well, there's the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales. And she's like, but not about the Rings of Power. I'm like, but she's like, Mom, one day I'm going to write them. I'll write the book. I'm like, you do that, girlfriend.
Yes.
And then she says, she was asking, what's Nori's dad's name? And I was like, oh, it's, I forgot what it was, but I told her. And she goes, well, what's his dad's name? I'm like, I don't know. He's not in the books. I thought you knew everything about Lord of the Rings, Mom. She just looks so like, what the heck? My life is a lie. And then she wanted to know why Doran's wife didn't get to go to the elf dinner. And I was like, because she had to stay home and take care of the kids. And she goes, that's not fair.
It isn't fair, Lizzie. It's not fair.
And then she was asking, is Galadriel a queen or a warrior queen? And I was like, yes.
You're,
and then my other favorite was, oh, go ahead.
She's not called queen until later, like Queen Galadriel.
Yeah.
So right now, technically, she's a warrior.
Right. And then last but not least, there goes Nori, always running into trouble. That was one of my favorites.
It's true. Well, thank you for everybody who stuck with it through these 2 bonus episodes of going over the first season of the Rings of Power. We hope you enjoyed it, and if we brought up some little nuggets of knowledge you didn't catch the first time watching, cool. You're welcome.
We did our job. Yeah.
Yeah, we did our job. It might take us a little bit to get to watching through season 2 because we were both parents and it's hard to coordinate watching a show after bedtimes.
And not gonna lie, after watching the first episode, I'm not sure if I want Lizzie to watch it.
I know. Oh my gosh. I will just say this. It doesn't spoil anything. Can we just cut it a little, cut it out with all the stabbing? There was so much stabbing. Oh my goodness.
I was even telling Lizzie, I'm like, guess what? I watched the episode with Abby. So, we can watch it now, but it's a little dark, Lizzie. She's like, how dark? Like, A little dark.
Like, hey, that guy's, I'm sure getting stabbed in the eyeball once was enough. You didn't have to stab him in the eyeball like 7 times. I think it was good. I think he was good the first time, you know. But the even my husband was like, "Dang, they really got in there with the stabbing." I was like, "Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, what's their blood budget on this episode?" Like, they're really getting it. They're like, "Oh no, guys, we bought bulk blood, bulk fake blood. We gotta use it up."
We were told we didn't go hard enough in the first season. We're gonna take that into account and completely go the other direction.
Yeah. Everybody gets a turn. Come on, everybody get a stab in. Come on. Everyone gets a go. Anyway, so we're so glad that you're here. We have to rush off because Ashley gets to go to something pretty cool that I don't get to go to. And I'm so happy for her.
I get to go see Weezer in Seattle. So I get to get going so we can make that trek and
have fun. Oh my gosh, please have so much fun.
I will.
I want you to send me a picture of you stretching your hands out towards Rivers and be like, "This is for you. I love you."
You got it.
Weezer and Rivers has been my top of my list for I love him. Anyway, have so much fun. I hope Lizzie has fun. This is her first concert. What a first concert, am I right?
Mm-hmm. I'm excited for her.
Anyway, so thank you all for sticking around. And yeah.
Until next time, I've been Ashley.
And I've been Abby, and this has been the Sisters of the Shire podcast. And next week we'll be back to the Unfinished Tales. But we're so glad that you stuck around and hung out with us today, and we hope that you can hang out with us and join us next time. Bye!
Bye!
Thank you for teaching me a day.
Yay!